Okay, let's see. What leadership question am I to answer for you today? Okay, here we go. I'll take this one. Your bio says you facilitated across the globe, Canada, Europe, and the Caribbean, etc. What would you say is the most common leadership challenge faced, and could you share any specific ways to address the shortcoming? Well, I'd say that certainly leaders around the world right now are faced with the biggest challenge of leading in a context of greater volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we've seen that leaders who are the most successful in this context are the ones who've been able to learn their way through and embrace greater innovation and collaboration. The reason is not just that there's far too much for any particular individual to do, but that not any one organization or individual has the resources or the creative ideas to be able to address the innovative solutions or to bring forward the innovative solutions that are required today. But changing the mindset from one of accountability and low risk is quite a difficult thing to do, and needing to be able to change it to one of risk-taking and experimentation. But changing mindsets is the leader's job today. And really, that's the foundational philosophy of the Leadership and Transition course at Mind. You know, the trick is really to create the space for people to be able to experiment. So to give them air cover to individuals and groups that want to try doing things differently, trying to do their work differently. And to really protect them, particularly if what they want to try and their ideas may not be tested yet and may go against the dominant culture. So the idea really here is to think less like a bureaucrat and think more like a venture capitalist and scientist. That is, test the riskiest assumption first, with the fewest resources and the least amount of money you need. And that way, if you fail, then you've learned something and you can adjust and move forward, investing a small amount of money again to try the next phase. If you succeed, then you've learned something and you can continue to invest to move the project forward. So as the adage goes, fail early, fail often, and fail cheap. So I'd say at a high level, that really is the number one challenge for leaders today, and actually the number one job for leaders today, and that is to learn and to innovate and to collaborate.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Dr. Ruby Brown, Chief Executive Officer of the Management Institute for National Development, MIND, and the entire MIND family, we say a warm welcome on behalf of all of us to MIND's Leadership Development webinar. I am Prudence James Townsend, Director of Business Development and Communication here at MIND, and it is my absolute pleasure to see so many of you here this morning. I'm told about over 600 persons have actually registered so far, and that only includes persons on the Zoom platform. It does not include Facebook as yet, nor YouTube, where we're streaming live through JIS. So welcome to everyone, and it's fantastic to have you. For our first time experiences, I choose to call you welcome, welcome, welcome. And what took you so long? But it's still good to have you nonetheless. And for our returning residents, it is good to have you here. Because for us at MIND, what that signals, it's that experience that we bring to you, that we offer you, is one that you see value in. And because you see the value, you spread the word. And not only spread the word, you also come back and choose to invest your time with us. So we are very grateful for that as well. Now, through our MIND Leadership Development webinar series, what the agency does is to take this opportunity to bring to as many public officers and private sector counterparts the experience, top shelf experience in what a leadership development exposure or leadership development intervention looks and feels like. And so even though it's complementary, I can guarantee you the quality is no way watered down, because we believe in always giving to you, our key stakeholders, our absolute best. And with that, that is why we have today the lady of the hour, Dr. Susan Shea, who has a wealth of experience, not only in leadership, but also in change management. And she will be bringing us the content this morning through her own experience. I draw to your attention the opening testimonies, I will call them this morning, for those who saw and they listened to the heads of entities, permanent secretaries who spoke at the opening. You will note, for instance, Permanent Secretary Wayne Robertson, when he spoke about the change and learning and the importance of leadership. That is what the public sector learning framework is about. So public officers, you're going to be hearing a lot more about this over the weeks and months to come. So through cabinet approval, we are moving forward with the PSLF, or the Public Sector Learning Framework, and you'll also be hearing about the Public Sector Learning and Development Policy. And fundamentally, what these policy and the framework does is to change the way that the public sector on a whole looks at learning and leadership development. It's now going to look more coherent, more streamlined, and the term we love is more joined up. So all the key partners will be working together, because for us to have these changes that we need to see, we all have to work together, and it starts with leadership. So that is why the webinar today is such a perfect example. And Susan will show us how it is that as a leader, you actually now translate these policies and these required changes in behaviors and culture. How does that look to a leader? And how does that help the leader to not only lead self, but lead others and lead organizations to the success that is needed? Suzanne is a longtime partner of MIND. She has also over 25 years of experience in leadership. She works a lot with leaders, executives, private, public sector, and not-for-profit organizations. She's a lady who has traveled the world as well for work. So she has been across Europe, she's been across the Caribbean, she's been to Canada, and of course, the United States. And Suzanne's sweet spot is mindfulness, authenticity, and just effective leadership for organizational change. So we could not have someone who is more perfect for you. She's also a professional certified coach, and she's certified in change management through the Cornell University. Ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you that when we pick persons or select persons to come to our public service officers, we go for the best. So Dr. Shea, no pressure, no pressure. Just know that a lot is expected. And of course, you always deliver. So without further ado, I will hand you over to the lady of the hour. Just before I do that, I have one ask of you. The ask is stay engaged, stay focused. The most important asset you have, ladies and gentlemen, is your time. And you opted to share that time with us today so that we can impart to you some really rich information and a really rich experience. But you can only have that if you invest the time and attention. So that's the only ask we have of you. Should, in case you have any questions as we go through the webinar, please feel free to post those in the chat, and then the team will ensure that as many as possible are responded to by Dr. Shea. So thank you again. Welcome on behalf of the agency. And Suzanne, the virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Prudence. Wonderful to be with all of you today. Wow, what a great turnout. And I'm so delighted because this change management topic is such an important and rich topic. Before we jump into it, though, let's give ourselves a moment to arrive. As Prudence said, I have a lot of experience with mindfulness, and what I find is that it's the most important thing for helping us manage our attention and be present for what is about to happen. So I invite you to just simply find a comfortable seat, put your feet on the floor, and just do a very quick body scan. So let's start with our toes. You might even wiggle your toes a little bit. And bring your attention up into your legs, into your torso. Notice your strong back and your open front. Bring awareness into your head and shoulders, into your hands. And now let's just take a few deep breaths. And what we're doing with breathing is actually regulating our nervous system. It's very important when we're facing a challenge or when we're experiencing something new to be present. So breathing lets our nervous system know, especially those deep breaths, lets our nervous system know that all is good and we can proceed. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited about this topic. And as we begin, we'll do a little bit of review for some of you. And for others, it will be new. So I will share my slides and we will start. All right, so we have some learning outcomes for you today. And if you were here for the opening video, you heard some very interesting things about why public sector leadership is so important now. But I'll just review that a little bit, and we're linking those to our objectives today. So we'll be gaining insight, hopefully, for you into the critical success factors for effective change leadership in this environment. Jamaica's been going through many different change initiatives over the years, and I've been privileged to be involved with several of those, particularly in the leadership development space. And what I have been seeing is that there's been tremendous shifts taking place. And those shifts have to do with moving from a kind of attitude of bureaucracy and kind of playing it safe to taking more risks in a controlled and safe space. So this is what we're wanting to do, and I hope that my little talk today on change management will help you with that. We want to strengthen those leadership behaviors that inspire trust, engagement, and commitment, because that's really the number one thing that I've heard leaders are concerned about. If their people don't feel trust, if they don't feel engaged, if they're apathetic, then it's very difficult to really get anything to happen. So we'll focus a lot on that today. And then applying some practical strategies to engage the stakeholders, address resistance, and support change implementation. Well, let's start with the big picture. We're living in a changing world, and we all know that. I think the change is accelerating so much. It's almost frightening how quickly things are changing, and we have to adapt. So if you're with us on Zoom, feel free to put some of the things you think are changing into the chat. If you're on other platforms, you can just listen and we'll continue on. So one of the things that's changing that's certainly impacting Jamaica is climate change. And we're all familiar with the recent hurricane and the impact that it's had, both socially and economically. And it's impacted the public sector too, in terms of resources. There are shifts in global power alliances, which make managing and leading and, being socially responsible very difficult in these times. AI is having a big impact all over the world, and I'm sure you're feeling some of the impacts of that. And then there are some changes in funding commitments that no doubt are impacting you. And what are some of the other things that you're seeing? Anything in particular for Jamaica? So I'd like to review with some of you, and maybe for some it will be new, that we're living in what we're calling a VUCA world. That's VUCA, and I'm going to go through each of those in turn. So the V stands for volatility. There's so much change and it's happening so rapidly, and it's very difficult to sometimes even keep track of all of the changes that are taking place. So within that, that creates a lot of uncertainty. And, we're not quite sure, how do we communicate all of these changes to our people? How do we navigate this? That also is influenced by the amount of complexity that we're facing. So not only are we working within our own unit, but we're also having to work across the entire government sector in order to coordinate what we're doing, what our plans are. And we're having to pay attention to what's happening in the world as well as in our own country. And this can lead to a lot of ambiguity. And it can be very difficult to know how to communicate. Sometimes our reaction to that is to withdraw and to feel like it's overwhelming. We feel sometimes in this VUCA world like we're on a treadmill and that we have to just keep going faster and faster and faster. So this is where having a personal practice, such as mindfulness, being able to stop and pause, take a breath, tune into our bodies, And by the way, the body is such an amazing instrument that can help us navigate change. When we're feeling stressed, it's very likely that the people around us also are having that reaction to some of what's happening. And so if we can regulate our stress, it helps the people around us. We need to shift the focus from the externals of looking at all of what's happening in the world, and that can lead to a lot of anxiety and a feeling of powerlessness. And within our own leadership, within our own self leadership, we can shift that focus to our own internal core. And by that, I mean our values. What do we really stand for? What's important to us? To seeking understanding rather than being overwhelmed by what's happening. And that means asking a lot of questions. We also can cultivate compassion or empathy for others, which is a tremendous way to counteract both complexity and ambiguity. And then, of course, authenticity, showing up as who we really are. If we're feeling anxious, we might need some support, and that's fine. We can ask for that through a coach or through many of the different services that Mind offers. And if we are able to do that, we can provide that support to others. So that's a very, very important element in change management. So all of those external factors are going to be taking place no matter what. And the question is, how are we going to respond? So let's continue on. I would love to invite you to take a short poll. I think our tech people will offer that to you. But here are some of the questions. And if you don't have access to the poll, you can just think about this. And I'd be very interested to hear. Okay, so go ahead. And you can respond to the poll. So many of us are leading policy changes. I know that there are some external pressures that are impacting you, and so policies do need to change, and people are not always receptive to that. Many of you are dealing with reorganizations. I recently was coaching someone whose department was reorganized into another department, and it was a painful process for this person because she thought she was about to be promoted. So we worked quite a bit on some of the topics I'm going to share with you today, and she found it to be very, very helpful in finding her own confidence again and being able to lead her group in this new context. Mergers are happening, downsizing is a potential. And then, of course, we need to do reskilling. And many of you are also involved in process improvement. Okay, so now let's see the results of our poll. Perhaps I need to stop sharing. Are you able to share the results of the poll with us? Okay, well, let's continue on. So there are many different change initiatives that we're all involved with. And what I'd really like to do is talk now about some of the ways that we can begin to address it. So there is, in every change initiative, the context in which we're operating. And that context includes the political, the environmental, and the social environment that we're involved with. Over time, and especially within government organizations, we have existing structures and policies that provide stability, which is very, very helpful, but they also can constrain the change. And so we need to look at both the context as well as the structure to see what are some of the things that are impinging on our successful change implementation. And now, one of the most important parts is how we work with the people. So the people might be excited, but often they might feel disengaged or even apathetic, or often they feel threatened by the change. And this is not irrational. Changes are disruptive and they impact people in many different ways. Some people really like change, but many don't. And that's often because change involves loss. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. And so your implementation strategy needs to take all of this into account. So we have the plans that we have made, and hopefully these plans involve outcomes that we're looking for. But those outcomes don't just happen by magic. We as leaders need to facilitate and help that change happen so that it can be quite successful. So some of the obstacles to that could be lack of goal alignment. Are our goals within our plan aligned with some of the other departments that we are relying on to actually make this change? And do our people understand the goals that we're seeking and how that will impact their behavior? We may be struggling with a lack of resources, and that is very, very common. I have found in many, many contexts that I work in, but particularly recently within the Jamaican context. And so we have to get creative, and doing small experiments that don't cost a lot of money, but that can be innovative and exciting and can help people see things in new ways is a very important thing that we can do. Sometimes there's lack of engagement, and I spoke to that earlier, and that's going to be a big focus for the rest of the presentation. And also, we may be encountering resistance to change. So all of those impact the results that we're getting, and we're going to focus on that middle section now in the rest of the presentation. So change can really be challenging. It's often positive, certainly for the organization, but it can involve loss or disorientation for individuals. People need support and continuous learning in order to navigate the external changes, as I talked about with VUCA, and the internal transitions, which we'll get to in a moment. The internal transitions are the emotional ups and downs that people go through during a time of change. And employees look to their managers and leaders for this. However, we're not always ready to help people because we may also be experiencing some of those feelings. So hopefully we can address some of those today. So what employees really need is awareness of the need for the change. So this means we need to communicate often and with good examples why the change needs to happen. The why is very, very important for people. We need to help motivate them to feel some desire to participate, and that might mean helping them understand what's in it for me. For some, It might mean a change in their job, or it might even mean leaving the organization. But if we can find ways to provide support, it can be very, very helpful for people to have a fresh look on their lives and to explore some different options. They need to know how to change. So, what's really expected of them during the change? And then it's great if they can have a way to demonstrate the new skills and behaviors. Certainly in the projects I've been involved with Mind, that is built into the program for people to be able to learn and then demonstrate what they learned. And then what you can do is to reinforce and sustain the change through perhaps changes in your human resources policies or ways that you reward people. And rewards don't always have to be monetary, they can be other types of rewards. I'm thinking about one manager I worked with who wanted to reinforce culture change within his unit. And he decided that it would be great for the group to come up with their own set of values. And so they did. And, people thought, oh, this is just an exercise. But he turned it into an actual reinforcing to sustain the change by putting a little plastic rose inside of a vase. And then he placed that rose on the desk of the person that he felt was living the values. And then it was up to that person to take that rose the next week and put it on the desk of someone else. So you could say, oh, that's really dumb or silly, but those kinds of things can also be fun. So that's just a little example of how you can, some ways to reinforce change. So what's your role in the change process? Well, number one, to model the change. And again, this can be challenging because we might have our own feelings and emotions about the change. Get support, get coaching, talk to a friend. Um, you know, just work with it yourself so that when you're communicating with others, you can do it from a place of authenticity. It's okay to be sad about changes that are happening. It's okay to feel like, oh, this is difficult. But we can move through it. That's one of our wonderful attributes as human beings is that we are very resilient. Communicate about the change. What I've seen again and again for leaders is that when we feel anxious or when we feel concerned, we tend to stop communicating. And maybe we think, well, this'll probably change too, so why should I say anything? But what employees really need is for you to communicate again and again and again as things are changing. And even to say something like, I don't know the answer to that. I'll try to find out, but it may just be that we won't know for another month. But I'm here for you. And if you want to talk, my door is open. So that is a really great way to help inspire the kinds of trust and I'll say psychological safety that people need in order to move through a change. Involving others. You might feel like, as the leader, it's all up to me, and I need to manage this change by myself. I need to make sure that it all goes well. But really helping other people see the problem or see the issue, and then having them help with brainstorming ideas or solutions makes them feel like they're more in control. And that is a very, very important element to people navigating the change well. Help others break from the past. Sometimes we might need to do a little ritual or a little ceremony of some kind. I remember one manager I was working with who decided they were going to do a ritual. And so they brought their team together. They talked about all of the things that they had accomplished in the last 5 years since they'd been together. And then they took pieces of paper and wrote down what they really appreciated and then what were some of the things they were happy to let go of. And they put them all in a little bowl and they took them outside and they set fire to them. Kind of dramatic. And where I live in Colorado, we're not able to do fires at all anymore. So that may not be something that works for you, but it's just another example of some ways that you can make the change process a little more interesting and fun. And then create a supportive learning environment. And this is where mind can certainly help. So I think this is really the bottom line, which is that changes of any sort, even though they may be justified in economic or technological terms, they finally succeed or fail on the basis of whether the people affected do things differently. So we may have a lot of ideas on our spreadsheets of how things should change and shift, but if people are not aligned and not on board, we run into problems. So let's focus on that. All right, so I'm going to make a distinction between change, which is situational, and it's the move to a new site, retirement, a merger, reorganization, and so on, versus transition. Okay, so with change, our starting point is what is the desired outcome that we want from this change? Otherwise, why should we go through it? It's too much trouble. It's not worth it, all of the pain. So you've got to be really clear on that outcome. However, that's not enough. Transition is psychological. And it's a three-phase process that people go through as they internalize and come to terms with the details of a new situation. And the starting point is the ending. That's what's really important here and interesting. Transitions are not optional. So let's think of some of the changes that we may have been involved with in our lives. Some of the positive changes might be inviting a brand new baby into our lives. Okay, that I know that can sometimes be challenging, but it can also be quite wonderful. And yes, certainly the 9 months in preparation, you're getting ready, and getting ready. But when the baby is finally born, that's the ending of being an individual with no children. Suddenly, that's the ending of that life. And it's the beginning of a whole new life. But that ending is when many people go through a lot of feelings about that transition. So the same is true in the workplace. It's very difficult to focus on new beginnings until we go through letting go of the old, navigating through what else is shifting, and then we can finally be ready for a new beginning. So let's take a closer look at that. So at the beginning, okay, so when a change process is beginning, we need to be very clear about what's ending. And as you can see from this little chart on the left-hand side, the main focus is the endings and being clear about that once a change has been announced. There's a little bit of emphasis on the neutral zone, which I'll talk about later, and a little bit of a glimpse of what the new beginning can have. But primarily when the change is announced, we're beginning to focus on the endings. And this is a really, really important thing to pay attention to. So let's go into that in more detail. And as we do, you may want to think about, where is my team in this transition model? Are they going through an ending and dealing with that in some way? Are they in the neutral zone, or are they ready for a new beginning? So as we're beginning this change process, here are 4 questions that will help you prepare and things that you can communicate to your people. So first of all, what is changing? Is it our structure? Is it our policies? Or are we going through a reorganization, or all of the above? And what will actually be different? And I think at this point, it's also really important to communicate, why will that be better? What is the positive impact of all of this change? Because people are going to focus on who's going to lose what. And that's not because people are bad or that people are insecure or people are just anxious. It's because as human beings, we tend to focus, our default mode is anxiety, you could say, or a little bit of fear, because we're always got that little bit of survival anxiety in the back of our mind. And so we're concerned about what we're going to lose. So how can we best support everyone through the change? And one of the best ways is to acknowledge, yes, people will be losing some things, but involving them in that conversation is very, very important. Okay, so in the endings phase, what do we need to focus on? So the first phase of transitions begins with recognizing and engaging what is coming to an end. So, maybe what's coming to an end is that you are leaving the group because maybe you've been promoted, or perhaps, I hate to say this, but maybe you've been laid off, or maybe you've been moved to another group. So even though you're dealing with your own sense of loss, it's important to be able to communicate to others. So naming the endings, naming the loss, what is ending? So this phase ends with a kind of acceptance of loss, but getting there can be a challenge. So some of the common experiences that people have as they're going through the endings is it, and we may feel these same ways. They may feel anger or frustration or stress. There may be confusion or sadness or grief. And there's been a lot written in the literature of change management about resistance. And I feel that with empathy, we can really turn resistance into acceptance. So it's not just the change, it's kind of resistance to having to let go of the way things were and how we are used to dealing with them. So people might overreact, they may kind of crawl into a shell, or there may be no reaction. They might just blank out because the whole thing feels overwhelming. So some of the things that leaders can do to help facilitate others going through the ending phase. We can describe the change in more detail and define what's over and, what is not changing. Sometimes that's really helpful too, because people might feel like everything's changing. But communicating again and again and again, sometimes we might feel like a broken record. We just go on and on and on saying the same thing, but we need to, because people need to hear it. Sometimes they might just not be in a mental space to be able to hear us, and so we need to say it again the next day. Openly acknowledge the loss. Don't just pretend like, oh, it's all going to be better and we're all going to land on our feet. Maybe. Certainly do emphasize the positive outcomes of the change, as I mentioned before. And look at what's behind the loss. Are people feeling a kind of overreaction? So when it's applicable, for the loss in some way. Maybe somebody lost their window seat at the with their desk, or maybe somebody had to move out of an office and into a kind of shared space. There may be ways to talk with them about that, or ways to help them deal with that loss. So I'm going to give you an opportunity now just to take a few notes about endings. Where in your change process are you seeing some endings, and what might be some leadership choices that you could make to help people relate with this loss and with this change? So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So just take a moment and again, come back to yourself. If you'd like to just do that quick body scan again and just notice, what are some of your reactions right now? Are you having any anxiety as you think about this? I mean, that would be a very natural response to have. Take a few deep breaths. And if you have a way to take a few notes, that would be helpful. Good.
Dr. Shay?
Yes.
All right, so some persons had made some comments
Okay.
based on the topic you were discussing.
Thank you.
And so we see comments coming from Christina Webley Smith, the way we motivate, engage, and lead our people, especially where performance is concerned. Althea Mackenzie Stewart, there's an echo. Christina again, motivators, flexi work hours. And a comment that says, regarding communicating the change, persons who are resistant will hesitate, and also persons may feel persons may feel that if they ask questions, they may be seen as lacking. How can the organization create an environment to encourage that communication?
Yeah, that's great. I think being very explicit about saying to people, you might have questions, and it's okay to ask them. There are no dumb questions, no bad questions. You as the leader need to create that safety. And you can do that by just outright saying questions are welcome. So I would encourage you to do that. Thank you very much for sharing those comments. Let's go back to our leadership choices. Okay, so let's assume that that people have come to terms somewhat with the ending, and that they have a feeling of, okay, I'm not sure this is going to be great, but I'm willing to try. So there's a little bit of openness that's starting to happen. So let's take a look at the next zone, which is called the neutral zone. So this is also known as the wilderness. And the reason why is because it's kind of in between. The some people in the group may still be grieving a little bit, or maybe coming to terms with the fact that their manager is leaving, or that the group is changing, or that the charter of the group is changing. But this is an opportunity to kind of reckon with the loss and to have more of a sense of purpose and get a little bit of a glimpse into the new beginning. So this is a time where you can really help people tune into their own sense of empowerment themselves. So you might, again, you might need a little help with this from a coach or from someone else, but if you can also guide your people in managing their own stress, being responsible for their emotions, and the way you can do that is to create an environment where in your meetings, perhaps you do something like a check-in and let people in a safe space just say a couple of words about how they're doing today. You might learn a lot, and certainly people on your team will learn a lot about each other. And I know that in some environments, this can feel a little bit dangerous. People don't want to share what's happening in their personal lives, but it can be very, very helpful. So you can start with different prompts. You don't just have to start with "How are you today?" Maybe you start with something like, what have you learned in the last week that you would like to share with the group? So that might be a little less personal and something a little bit more work related that they can talk about. Or perhaps you could ask people, what was one thing that somebody in the team did to help you this week? And that starts to help people kind of share the generosity of appreciation. So some of the common experiences that people have in this neutral zone is they might be afraid of what's ahead. They may feel frustrated with some of the challenges of just getting things accomplished. I'm sure we all have been in this situation where so many things are changing that we're not even sure what we need to do in order to be productive. And so that's, again, up to us as managers. One thing we can do is help people have some short-term wins to structure things so that they don't have such long timelines, but that maybe every week we kind of celebrate the successes that have taken place that week. Another challenge is one of timing, that some people might want to rush forward while others want to go back to the way things were. It may just be that people feel anxious or tired or confused, like what the heck is going on? And there might be a decline in motivation. You might even see more absenteeism and etc. This will pass. You might see more issues that you thought were previously resolved coming back again. And this just happens when people feel anxious. And you might feel or experience some frustration with management. And of course, the temptation for us is to say, well, if only those people up there would get it together, we would all be fine. But we must take responsibility for our own unit and just say, okay, within the context of what we've been given, we also need to do the best we can. And to help people be creative about how they work with their obstacles. So some of the choices for you in this neutral zone are to set some shorter range and more realistic goals. So don't just keep your goals and your measures or metrics from the past. Update them so that people can be successful in this new environment. And validate the current experiences that people are having. They may feel quite overwhelmed, or they might be starting to get excited. So it's not one size fits all. And then offer some opportunities for them to develop some new skills and knowledge. If you can send them to a class, that is great, because often people just need something to pay attention to as they're navigating through the change. But if you don't have the budget for that and you're not able to do that, sometimes doing some cross-training within your team can accomplish similar things. It just gives people something to focus on that they can feel good about and that they can celebrate. You might consider revising your policies and your procedures. And again, communication is always a very, very important thing. All right, let's pause for a moment and I'll give you a chance to just take a few notes on what, if you find your team in the neutral zone, what are some things you might do that would be a little bit different and that you could try on for size? I know it's asking a lot of you as a leader to say you've got to lead this change, but also be innovative. But that's really what leading change is about. Staying resilient. So getting the support you need in order to do that. So again, let's just check in with ourselves and take a little moment to reflect. How am I feeling about all of this change management stuff? And how can I even support myself in my body right now? Maybe you just need another few deep breaths. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. New beginnings, finally. We always run a rush to the new beginning because these are exciting. I know I tend to favor beginnings rather than endings. I don't know about you, but new beginnings are so wonderful, and we can begin by thinking about what is our new purpose. So just a little warning here, most of the new beginnings abort, or they can abort, because they weren't preceded by well-managed endings and neutral zones. So we need to take the time and have the patience with ourselves and with our people to actually go through these different phases. So the new beginning is the arrival into a new way of doing things and potentially a new way of being. It's a connection between the new opportunity presented by the change and an authentic, deeply felt sense of purpose, hopefully. So we want to invite people into discovering what their purpose could be in this new environment. So some of the common experiences that people may have in a new beginning phase is maybe they feel excited. Maybe there's still a kind of anxiety about, is this going to work? I hope it will. Um, there might, one thing that's not listed here is there might be a little bit of survivor guilt in that some people might have left the organization uh, without that being their choice. And so the people remaining might still feel a little bit guilty about that. But there might be a feeling of new identity. Now, often change involves new technologies. It might involve new stakeholders and new relationships. So there will be a need for people to kind of identify with, who am I now in this new role? And one of the little frameworks I like to use when I'm working with change is that all good teams have these four elements. They have clear goals, they understand their roles, they have clearly identified processes that they're constantly improving, and then finally, they work together on their relationships. So they resolve conflicts and they continue to improve how they work together. So those four things can be helpful in the new beginnings. So possibly the new beginning might trigger some old memories, maybe like we didn't do it right last time, and maybe we made kind of a mess of things. So, helping people express those things or let go of some things. And yeah, that's important because sometimes when we're going through a change, people feel like, oh, I guess what we were doing before wasn't right. And it's up to you as a leader to help people understand, no, we were doing the best we could at the time with what we knew. And now we're beginning to move into a new phase. So that helps people resolve those fears or those concerns. Now, this last one I think is really interesting. Some people really enjoy the neutral zone. And here's why. Because some people really like that ambiguity. They're not quite ready to be born into something new. They like the feeling of less pressure and less stress. So you need to invite them into the new world and let them know what they're being held accountable for. So some of the things we can do as leaders to help facilitate this, yeah, we need to clarify and communicate our new purpose and our new mission. And this is just a great opportunity to involve people in co-creating. You may have a draft of a purpose or a mission, but I would suggest sharing it early and often with your team so that they feel like, we're part of this. We can actually influence it. And then after you have your purpose created, you might work with people on what might an image of success look like. Is there a picture, or is there a metaphor? Is there an image of some kind? And I've seen this over the years with different groups coming up with very creative ideas. I mean, one that's maybe very obvious would be kind of a flower that's blooming. There have been metaphors of, slaying a dragon. And, but together with your team, you can come up with something that would be unique to your team. You can also rename your team. Maybe not, you can't rename your department, but maybe informally your team might like to have a name. And you can help people come up with a new set of values and provide some uh, consistency in this new beginning. I think, again, communication is one of the most important things we can do. And the actions that we take in order to reinforce that change and to provide rewards, even if they're just simple rewards. I have found that often in a change process, people are lacking feedback because everyone's so busy trying to figure out what's the next thing I have to do and how am I going to do it. So, of course, you as a leader can give people individual feedback, but sometimes it's nice to bring your team together. And if they're not used to giving feedback, you can suggest that they start with positive feedback. So let's come together as a team and we'll spend the last 10 minutes of our meeting with each person getting some feedback from the team on one thing they did that really helped the project over the last week or over the last month, depending on how often you meet. And this will start to build trust in the team. It will start to establish better relationships among people as they look for the things that they can appreciate about one another. Again, enabling quick successes. So don't have a project that has a deadline 2 years out. Make sure you've chunked it out so that you've got phases or modules so that you can celebrate at the end of each one of those and celebrate those successes. It could just be a moment of silence and appreciation and naming some of the people that have really helped with something, or you can get more fancy. If there's a big thing you want to celebrate, you can have some kind of a party. So let's just take a moment now to reflect on all of the different phases that we've been talking about. And I'd like to invite you just to reflect on where are you in this process? And it may be that different parts of your team or different parts of your organization are in different phases. What are some things, just 2 or 3 things that you might be able to do to lead the organization and to lead the people so that you're dealing with both change as well as transition? So I'll just give you a moment to take a few notes. Thank you. So we now have an opportunity for some Q&A and to get into more detail about how we might navigate these changes and what are some other issues that might be coming up for you as you're thinking about the change that you're addressing? So I'm also looking at some of the questions and comments in the chat. I see Jesse is mentioning that it's fear of the unknown that often results in resistance to change. And I think that's really true. What do we do as human beings when we're not sure about the outcome or we're not sure about the future? And by the way, we're never sure about the future, but sometimes things seem like they have more stability than others. Well, we usually fill it in with a feeling of anxiety. And that's okay. That's just part of how we're wired as human beings. That's our default mode, as I mentioned before. So having compassion for that and being able to be there for others is very important. Yeah, so I see a question from one of the attendees saying, what about our leaders not accepting the change, but still expecting you to deliver? Okay, we really can't control what other people do. So if you have a leader at the level above you who is not really accepting the change, it's still up to you as a leader in your department to find ways to see the potential. If you also don't think that the change is a good thing to do, or you see some dangerous elements in how that change is happening or how it's being implemented, it's up to you to bring those to your manager and to encourage your manager to also voice those. What doesn't really help with change and what doesn't really help with positive change is to not say anything. And I know it's scary. It requires a lot of confidence. And I think this is something that we need to practice. So in other programs, we go into much more depth about how to work with your emotional intelligence, how to access your own inner strength and confidence in times of difficulty. So I would suggest accessing, additional resources if you feel uncertain about how to do that. So Devin is asking, is leading and managing the same thing? Often the words are used interchangeably, but traditionally, you could say that managing really comes from the root of the word for hands. And it has to do with, being hands-on and making sure that we accomplish the things that we set out to do. Whereas leading, the root of that word comes more from the eyes and from vision. And it has to do with seeing the future that's possible. So I think in your roles, you need to both lead and manage, but they're both very important. I see a question here. How does an employee communicate a change framework without causing disaffection by their company manager or leader? Yes, that can be challenging. If you're not in a management role, it might be a good idea to talk with your manager about this framework if it appeals to you, and to just speak to that person independently rather than bringing it up in a team setting, and to just explore that together. I think more and more people are becoming aware of these frameworks and how useful and important they are. So you might be surprised that there's openness. But yes, I would definitely encourage you to talk with your manager first and together see if there's a way that you might be able to bring this into the team. So another person is asking, if you work with a small organization and you love what you do and you do it well, but there's no room for promotion. Oh yes, this is tough. What's your best advice for one who's been there for over 7 years? Thank you. That's a great question. I receive this kind of question a lot in my coaching practice. And there are a few different recommendations. One is to put your focus on learning as a way to motivate yourself. So you can always learn something new in the role that you're in. Or if you feel like I've been in this role too long and I can't learn something new, then prepare yourself for the next level up. Even if that's not a possibility within your small organization, it might be a possibility somewhere else in an organization that's similar. But in any case, you might be able to help the organization you're in by taking on more leadership skills, more management roles, and by helping out with additional projects. So these are things you can do no matter whether there are promotional opportunities or not. And then you have to really ask yourself, where am I? What stage of life am I in? Am I just starting out? You say you've been in your role for 7 years. Okay, that's a good amount of time to establish yourself. Or maybe if you're in mid-career, and you still plan to work for many more years, you might think about moving to another organization. Um, Another thing to say is you never know what the future will bring and what opportunities might arise if you prepare yourself. So even though there's not room at the top now, there might be in a year. So keep that in mind. All right. Another person is asking, what about leaders not accepting the change, but expecting the best delivery with the worst resources? Yes. Oh, it's so tough. I want to just start by empathizing with you. Um, so that's a difficult spot. And again, it's up to us rather than focusing on the external VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, um, complexity, and ambiguity, to turn inward and to say, what matters to me in this change? Who do I want to be in this change? So what we're doing now, whether we're a leader with a role or whether we're just someone who is in the team, we can still tap our inner leader, and we can cultivate those qualities of leadership that are very, very needed in the organization. And that has to do with personal responsibility, with knowing ourselves, with emotional intelligence, and with managing our own stress. Okay, so how do we adjust to working through that environment? Well, you have many choices here, some of which may not feel like choices to you, but one is work with yourself internally to tap into your inner resources. So that's number one. Number two is communicate with your boss or with someone else in the organization that you trust and let them know what's going on for you and seek some support. If that doesn't feel safe, you may be faced with having to change jobs and to go somewhere else. And I just always feel that people need to have that as a bottom line because otherwise we feel trapped. So, having a backup plan of if I leave this job, what else might I do even if you never implement it, is very good advice. Thank you. Okay, in communicating the change, Jesse's saying we can also use change agents within our teams to help promote and create understanding of the change and ease anxiety. Excellent point. So there are some people on your team who are feeling excited and motivated and who are willing to help you. So know those people, invite them as informal leaders to also put in a good word at the end of a team meeting, or maybe they could be the ones to start off with their appreciations of other team members. That kind of thing changes the psychological environment on the team and really helps people feel connected and engaged. So thank you, Jesse. Patricia, how do you get the buy-in of all staff and top management for a change management program? Woo! That's a big question. Yeah, again, that's something I work with a lot in my coaching practice. So I would say start early with the buy-in. Create a general idea of the outcomes you're looking for and some of the things that will be changing along the way, and begin sharing that with stakeholders and saying, where do you see, what is the strength of my plan, and where do you see some issues with my plan? And then hear their feedback and adjust it, and then go to the next stakeholder. So don't wait until you have a perfect plan before you begin sharing it. This is very, very important, because many of us feel like, I don't want to share something that's not perfect. But if you can say to them, this is a plan in process, I'm engaging you because I feel that your wisdom is important and what you have to say is vital for the success of this. So please help me with that. I think that's one way. So, it's kind of engaging people. Again, it's something that you might want to do in stages. So you might work with your top managers first and then kind of work down through the organization. But again, you might want to share it with your people before it's completely finished, but maybe not when it's just starting. So those are a few thoughts. Okay, someone's asking, in the neutral zone, what role would innovation play in that zone? What would be the place to introduce innovation or strike a balance? Thank you. Yeah, great question. I think the neutral zone is a really good place for innovation. With one group that I'm working with currently, it's a nonprofit, and they're shifting from being kind of a top-down hierarchical organization to one that is more team-led. And so they have a different governance structure. They're creating circles for their key initiatives, and then each person, or one person from each circle, then will be part of the governance team. So that may not sound so different than the way many groups are operating now, but for them, it's a difference in how they communicate. So what we're doing is we held a retreat, and we introduced the change, and they experimented with it. But now they're in a period of time of 3 months where they're experimenting with what different roles do they need to have within the teams and how might they operate. And I consider this to be our neutral zone. So it's a safe time to experiment and to try new things and to seek ideas from people. Hello, Diana. Is there something you'd like to add?
No, no.
Great. Okay, I'll continue on here. Let's see. Okay, how do you motivate persons to do their best when there's uncertainty about job security? That's a tough one. I guess, one approach, and this would be how comfortable you are being authentic. But I think the thing that really helps people the most is if you can meet them where they are. And so to say something like, yes, this is a challenging time, and you're facing some, you're facing a lot of uncertainty. And I don't know, I can't tell you whether or not you have a job. And just talk with them about how they feel about that. And then there's a certain point where you might say, so you you have several choices as you're addressing this. I mean, you might feel like you want to just, you know, quietly quit and not really work as hard. But people, unfortunately, will still be monitoring and watching what you're doing. So you might also make a choice of throw yourself into this, do your best, maybe even learn some new skills that will help you just in case you get laid off. But, you know, see, and then ask them what support they need in order to really address and respond to the change and to the demand that's being asked of them. So again, this is a conversation, but I think it's really helpful if you can be very straightforward about the uncertainty and really put it back on them to acknowledge that, address it, and to prepare themselves. Okay, how do we deal with the change where all you hear about is the workload ahead, but compensation is silent? Okay, if you're in an upper management position, pay attention to this question because people really do want to know, where do I stand and what's in it for me? You've probably heard the acronym WIFM. That's what's in it for me. So how do we deal with the change when all you hear about is workload? So if you're an employee in that situation, you might again need to talk with your manager about your concerns. But I think if you're a leader in this situation, it's really important to let people know when they might hear this. So you might not have the answer. But if you tell people, we should know more about this particular issue within the next little while, I think that really helps you establish trust and keep that trust. The other thing about workload, again, change always involves more work because we have to keep doing what we've been doing, and now we're adding other things on as we're making the change. So acknowledge that, be honest, let people know, and get their ideas about how to make it more fun and interesting. Okay, Betty's saying in the endings, stress the individual value. What's in it for you to be gained because of the change? There's an opportunity in almost all changes. Thank you, Betty. That's really great wisdom. And thank you for sharing that. Chrisana, how do you implement change when hierarchically you are lower than the individuals you need to enact the change? Oh, how do I navigate power dynamics in this situation? Thank you. Great, great question. Um, yeah, gosh, in other workshops, I do a whole section on power dynamics, and I'll just do a really quick one right now for you, which is there are many different sources of power. And one that we often forget about is our personal power. So personal power has to do with your ability to manage your stress, your ability to stay in relationship with yourself, even when things are difficult, to not beat yourself up, but to be compassionate, and to emphasize your strengths and so on. So that's personal power. And then on top of that, we have what's called role power. And role power is the power that's given to you because of the job you have. So, yes, your manager has more role power than you do, and their manager has more role power than they do. In the course I teach, it's about the right use of power. So, when we have role power, how can we deal with that responsibly? When you have less role power, it doesn't mean you don't have any power. But it does mean that you need to be very good at communicating. You need to be proactive in bringing your issues to your manager, and also be creative about coming up with solutions rather than only bringing problems. So, if you are a change agent, let's say this is a little different, so you're more like a consultant. You do have some position power and some role power. And again, I would suggest that you work with your stakeholders and again, work with them early and often so that they understand the change is coming and you can get their input as you are beginning to implement that change. And then go back to them with, thank you so much for your input. And here's how I'm shifting my approach based on your suggestions. But involving them is a way to keep them connected. All right, let's see. Accepting change should require all persons on board. Empathy through implementation, clear communication, and feedback should be encouraged from leaders. Great. Another piece of wisdom. I wish I could see your name, but thank you so much for sharing that. Let's see here. What are some tips to roll with resistance during the change process, especially if the team lead is more of talk than execution? Dual personality traits. Yeah. I wish I could speak with you, Beverly. That would be fun to get more detail. I would say honor the resistance. The resistance represents intelligence. So don't feel like resistance is a bad thing. I think that's number one. Now, I'm not sure who you are in this process. So if you're a member of the team and there's resistance and the team lead is not really doing much, gosh, I'm not sure who you are in this scenario. If you're the manager of that team lead, you need to work with that person to help them manage the change and to move toward execution. Okay, well, I feel like I don't quite have enough info here to answer you correctly, but those are a few ideas. And I think I'll stop now and see if some of my colleagues from Mind want to jump in and kind of help with some of the Q&A. So I will open it up to additional support from my Mind colleagues and see if they would like to present the questions or help with some of the interface.
Okay, Dr. Shea, we're here.
Great.
All right,
So,
so go ahead.
yeah, how would you like to engage here?
All right, so pretty much we are seeing the comments and questions coming in. I'm going to be reading the questions. We're not sure if we can take all of them, but as best as possible.
Great. And thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many questions.
Okay, so we have a question from Marvin Dent. It's a comment rather. Change always comes with resistance from who are set in their ways and the customs basically running on automatic. It's 1 year experience repeated 40 times.
Yes.
Someone asked a question, why do employees often resist change even when the change will benefit them?
Okay, well, let me start with the first one. Yeah, this repeating the 1 year experience 40 times, I imagine you're quite frustrated with this. So look at your own experience. Why do you run on automatic? Sometimes it's because the rest of your life is very demanding, and so you need to have some place where things are standard and where you don't have to invest a lot of creativity. Unfortunately, during a change process, we need everybody to be on board and to be creative. So this is a little talk you can have with your team, which is that this is the expectation, and to acknowledge that they may be running on automatic, and we really need them to pause, hit the pause button on that automatic response, and open up their minds to more creativity. And you can say that many times, it may not help, but if you can structure some experiences where people, it could be a team meeting where you do a little bit of team building and you invite people to bring their creativity, it helps to disrupt some of those automatic patterns. So that's one idea. Okay. And
Okay, thank
yeah, your second question?
Yeah, thank you for that, Doc. Okay,
Sure.
so you'd have responded to a few questions that was also posted.
Okay,
We
good.
have Keisha Johnson asking, how do you engender trust and buy-in when resources languish to match the requirements to effectively implement change, yet the expectation is to achieve the results? Would you like
Oh,
me
I
to
see.
repeat that question,
No, I can
Doc?
read it. Thank you. That's
Okay.
great. Yeah, really good question. And this is, I've seen this again and again in different government agencies, not just in Jamaica, in other countries as well. But it is endemic to working in the public sector that we always have resource constraints. Again, I think straight talk and being genuine about the actual situation is what engenders trust. So when resources languish to match the requirements, yes, it puts the burden on the employee to have to kind of manage that gap. And I think what we want is to turn that into a team effort and to say, look, we're trying to do something that's quite difficult here. We don't have all the resources we need, so let's do the best we can. And I know you're not always in a position to change the metrics or to say, okay, we can have 2 weeks to do this, not just 1 week. But I think honesty here is the best policy. And it doesn't mean it doesn't mean blaming the people above you or saying, oh, if only we could get the resources. Yes, you want that. But it's more taking the attitude of, okay, this is the deck of cards, the hand we were dealt, and now we're going to respond.
Thank you
Thank
for that, Dr. Shea. We have another question here. How can new employees make recommendations and seems as though they are stepping on senior employees and or supervisors? I think Doc had responded to something similar. Uh,
Yes.
we
Mhm.
have Melanie Lothan. How do you deal with staff who refuse or operate as a team and accept change? As a younger manager, it's really hard leading someone who is older and believe that they should have been the leader. How do you work with that? And again, you would
Oh,
have responded to that
that's okay.
quite
But
similar.
this is a little bit new with the with someone older working for a younger manager, and believe me, I've encountered this quite a bit in my coaching practice. Um, and I think, again, straight talk, meeting with this person and saying, I understand that my new role might be a bit of a challenge for you. Um, I want to let you know I respect your learning and your knowledge and appreciate all of your years of service. And I look forward to working with you. And here's what I need and what I expect is that we all on our team become creative and bring our creativity to work with this new situation. I know you can do that. And I appreciate the disappointment that you may feel because of not having gotten the promotion. I will do the best I can as your manager to be respectful and to give you opportunities. But let's work together. Again, it might not work. You can't control what someone else is going to do or how they feel, but that might help. Okay, next question. You might be muted. I'm not hearing anything.
Let me support you with that, Doc. So there's another question here. How do you treat where people lack belief in themselves? Managers see their potential and they continuously live in their negativity, basically self-sabotaging, especially when there is change and the manager is forced to micromanage. Try to get them to see the benefits or give the change a try.
Yes, thank you. Oh, that's difficult. And I would say a little bit, let's just start with empathy. Okay. So as I read, as I hear this question and read the question, I feel a little bit sad. And I notice that I want the person to tap into their own personal power. So how can I do that? Of course, maybe as their manager, as you mentioned, I see their potential, and yet they continuously live in negativity, self-sabotaging. Let's just acknowledge that people have experienced hardships in their lives. And, the kind of big word for that is trauma. Some of their experiences might be bigger than others, but we've all experienced trauma. And what is that? Trauma is a moment when we have an experience that is so intense that it overwhelms our nervous system. And we go into what's called fight, flight, or freeze. And this person almost sounds like they're in the freeze mode where, for whatever reason, this change is triggering a lot of anxiety in them and they're just frozen in that. Again, I would recommend to this person that they do get some help, maybe that they could get some coaching or that they could get some support in some way, because this is deeper than just the change. It's actually something that they probably brought into the workplace with them. But if we can become a little bit more trauma sensitive or trauma informed as managers, we won't force them to try to see the benefits. We'll just give them opportunities to be successful in the new environment. So it's okay if they're not 100% behind it all. Trauma informed means that we allow different people on our team to feel differently and we address their needs in a somewhat individual manner. Of course, we have to deliver on our objectives as well. But a little bit of empathy goes a long way. So that's really all I can say. If you have available to you some kind of an employee assistance plan or some kind of therapeutic intervention or resources available, that is also a good thing to recommend. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, there's another one. This is very common. It's about communication. How should we engage with leaders who consistently fail to provide credible information?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. How should we engage with leaders who consistently fail to provide credible information?
They continuously feel
Fail
fail to communicate.
Right, to provide credible
Oh,
information.
right. So I guess, who are you in this scenario? If you're an employee, all you can do is request. And the way, to do it is politely and, with some empathy for your manager who may also be feeling overwhelmed. But to frame it as, here's something that would really benefit all of us, and me in particular. So could you please do this? I think another thing you can request is regular meetings. I mean, I've seen this again and again, that leaders or managers get overwhelmed with the change, and they start spending all of their time with their managers and not enough time with their employees. And maybe because they're trying to get answers. But if you, as an employee, make that kind of a request, I think it'll be a good reminder to the manager. And if you're a manager, take heed. Remember that this question was asked, and please communicate early and often. Thank you.
Okay. Any tips for the Jamaican context to have straight talk without it being an HR issue? Because sometimes what needs to be said is dot.
Oh, there it is. I found it. Okay. Any tips for the Jamaican context? Oh, I know. So sometimes straight talk turns it into an HR issue. Is that what I'm hearing? Because
Correct.
yeah, I'm just guessing here. Um, yeah, I think, maybe that's another class that Mind could offer, is straight talk without it leading to you going to HR or being dragged into it becoming an HR issue. Because I think if straight talk is done with respect and with caring, it lands very well. What doesn't land well is if you're angry and you're trying to get your point across and you call it straight talk, and you try to get your point across without allowing the other person to say anything or to even breathe. That can really be a problem. But I do, so I'm not accusing any of you of doing that kind of thing, but you're in a difficult spot, and I'm well aware of this, having taught several, well, many classes, both in leadership, change management, and also in coaching, that you're in a tough spot because it's difficult to actually let people go or fire them in the context that you're in. And so there's the straight talk needs to be skillful. And this is what I would really encourage you to learn. You can learn to be direct and at the same time to be kind. And that's the formula that you need to practice. It's we don't need to share everything that's in our minds when we're engaging with someone, because that may not be skillful. But there are ways to be encouraging and kind, and at the same time tell people kind of what's actually the situation. So again, I think more training in this would be really beneficial. And I also empathize with you for the difficulty that you're in structurally. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, gonna jump to the next page. How do you address change fatigue?
Oh,
Given the amount of past initiatives and shifting priorities employees are faced with, how do
right.
you prevent burnout and build genuine buy-in rather than passive compliance?
Yeah. Thank you, Vivian. That is our challenge. So all of the how-to questions that you're asking, can be helped by some of the things that I've mentioned so far. Change fatigue, though, is it's an issue that really needs to be addressed by upper management. So how can you, as maybe a leader or a manager, bring these issues to upper management? I think you need to give feedback and to say what you're noticing, what the behaviors are, and to request that change initiatives could be sequenced in time rather than all at once, or that there could be priorities given to one or two of the change initiatives. It's difficult because, as we know, all of the change flows downhill to the individual. And if all we do as leaders is provide more pressure on our employees, that does not help. So we need to also be a bit of a buffer and to help people think through in their own jobs how they're going to address these different change initiatives. Change fatigue, is another word for burnout. And burnout happens when people feel like there's more of a demand than they have the resources to give, or that they're trying to respond, but that they're not able to get success. So, it's almost like that little mouse that was on the treadmill in the slide that I showed you earlier. We need to help our people be more change resilient. And I think this could be another great program to help people with, is working with their stress, managing the difficulty, and then you as a leader make sure that they can actually be successful in some key area in their job. So that's one way that you can deal with it. And I know it's hard because you have a lot of change happening right now. And so it does require resilience. Thank you for asking. And we're getting close to our time of completion here. We'll take maybe one more question.
Okay, let me see who is going to close us out. All right, I'll go with this one. How can employees effectively deal with a leader who refuses to listen to their concerns, ignores their feedback, and makes them feel unheard?
Oh, yes. Well, if you're a leader, pay attention to this one. I'm sure this would never be intentional. Leaders usually just get overwhelmed with all the things they have to do, or they feel like, I'm the leader, I'm supposed to have all the answers, I can't share this with anybody. So if you're an employee, ask kindly, ask for what you need, express how their behavior is impacting you. And there's a methodology you can look up on the internet called nonviolent communication. It has a 4-part process, which is describe the situation. That's number 1. Number 2, describe the impact on you. And it may be on your job and maybe on the morale of the team. Number 3, express your need to be kind of in the know, or to have information or to get feedback or whatever it is you need. And then finally, number 4 is to make an explicit request. So my request to you is, could you meet with us once a month and let us know what's happening with the change process? So that's all I can suggest. I mean, of course, you can also take it to HR. And you don't want to do that first. You want to at least try to engage your manager in a kind and compassionate way. So thank you all for your wonderful questions. I've really enjoyed engaging with you. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to see your faces, but I'm imagining you all here and appreciating you all very much. It's a challenging situation you're in. I feel like Jamaica is making tremendous progress, and all of these change initiatives, even though they might feel like, oh, it's very incremental and we're barely moving forward, they are making a difference. So thank you so much.
Good morning, all. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes.
Okay. As we come to the conclusion of today's highly informative webinar, Leading Change Successfully, Turning Plans into Results, I would like, on behalf of our CEO, Dr. Ruby Brown, and the entire MIND team, to extend our sincere appreciation to our distinguished presenter, Dr. Susan Shea, for sharing her valuable knowledge, expertise, and insights with us. I would also like to express our heartfelt gratitude to each of the over 480 participants who took the time to join us and actively engage in today's session. Your thoughtful questions, comments, and participation have greatly contributed to the success and overall value of this webinar. We trust that today's session has provided you with valuable insights, practical knowledge, and useful strategies that can be applied not only in your professional responsibilities, but also in your daily lives, helping each of us to become more effective and impactful leaders. As Dr. Shea pointed out, that we are living in a VUCA world. Personally, I will be shifting my focus by replacing volatility with values, uncertainty with understanding, complexity with compassion, and ambiguity with authenticity. These principles will certainly influence how I approach leadership moving forward. I hope that many of you will also be inspired to apply the valuable lessons and insights shared today to your own leadership journeys. Once again, we extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Shea for her excellent and thought-provoking presentation, and to all of you for your valued participation, engagement, and continued support. We look forward to welcoming you to our upcoming webinars and to provide further opportunities for learning, growth, and professional development. Thank you once again for being with us today. We wish you all a wonderful and productive day. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Morris. Before we go, we'll be sharing a course evaluation. Kelia has just shared it with everyone. We're asking persons to complete the evaluation. Your feedback is very important to us, and it helps MIND to continue to strengthen the quality and relevance of the learning experiences we provide. And so we place it in the chat. You may also review the chat for the link. In addition to that, in one word, you may share how you describe today's webinar. Go ahead and drop that one word in the chat as well. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm seeing some very interesting responses coming in. Informative, inspiring, empowering, awesome, emojis, excellent presentation, and enlightening and thought-provoking, educational, wonderful wealth of knowledge. Thank you. A lot of informative, insightful, educational, eye-opening, amazing, insightful, excellent, empowering. Thank you so much for sharing, relevant, timely, impactful. And perhaps one more question for you. What is one key takeaway from today that you intend to apply in your role, team, or organization? And you can share that in the chat as well. Change starts with good leadership. Thank you. Better communication, empathy. Okay, so I'll repeat the question. What is one key takeaway from today that you intend to apply in your role, team, or organization? Be respectful, mindfulness, how to deal with change with better communication, adaptability, consideration for others, continue to cultivate equality. The comments are coming in. Respectful conversations around be respectful. Thank you so much for sharing. Be open to possibilities of ongoing change. Beautiful, very interesting responses. And so today's conversation has been about leading change successfully and turning plans into results. And so we also want to remind you of our change leadership program starting October 13. And so we would have also shared that earlier. One of our leadership development program, change leadership program, October 13. And so if today's session has sparked your interest and you would like to go deeper and further strengthen your ability to lead change within your organization, we invite you to continue the journey with us. The information on the program will be shared via email. Once again, on behalf of the Management Institute for National Development, MIND, I extend our sincere appreciation to our presenter, Dr. Suzanne Shea, for sharing her knowledge, experience, and practical insights with us today. And you, we couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please do continue to have yourselves a wonderful day.
and to collaborate.